Good morning, all. I'm truly delighted to be here this morning as the CARICOM region prepares for the UN Food Security Summit in September. We have so many things we can talk about, but the reality is that our simple focus must be how to put food on the table of our people throughout this region and how to ensure that we have a stockpile of food for the many crises that are now confronting us. We've already seen what this awful pandemic can do to the disruption of supplies and food globally. In addition, we are 4 days away from the beginning of the hurricane season, which is likely to imperil at least one of our nation states with respect to agricultural production, either through wind or indeed floods. What does this tell us all? That our goal of 25 by 2025 probably needs urgent modification. I trust and pray that our region will accept that we need to expedite the process of producing as much food regionally as we can, and that we need to come together accepting that the true breadbaskets of the region will be Guyana, Suriname, and Belize, but that does not remove from us, the rest of us, the obligation of producing as much food as we can. There are some difficulties that we have to confront. The first and foremost is the potential normal access to cheaper food from outside of the region. And therefore the question as to how we treat to the whole issue of food security, allowing us to anchor our domestic policies and our trade policies, becomes absolutely critical. We cannot afford to only have the need to grow food when there's a crisis. Our farmers need certainty to be able to produce food year-round. It means that there will be some need for some level of protection because they simply cannot withstand the onslaught of cheaper prices from outside where they have the benefit of scale. Unless we confront this frontally, we will put at risk our own national security and the well-being of our citizens. The bottom line is our farmers can only produce consistently if they are given the platform and the environment within which to do so. At the same time, we have too few people who have been schooled in the rudiments of good farming practices and good agricultural practices. We do not have a strong enough research agenda, and it is incomprehensible for me how that can be the case when, as far back as the 19th century, my own country led the world with respect to research in cane breeds as we exploited the reality of cane agriculture as it was then. At the same time as well, we need to be able to infuse technology in all that we do. We use cell phones now and telephones in order to be able to communicate, to do work, to do all kinds of things. And the ability to use technology, whether in the form of drone technology or other forms of technology that have been developed to be able to increase yields while at the same time not imperiling the quality of food that is produced, is absolutely essential. But my friends, technology is expensive, and therefore it is critical that we as a region coordinate to be able to secure the best prices wherever possible. And not only within our region should that collaboration take place, but the FAO and IECA and the World Food Programme can also work with us to ensure that we in this region can protect our people. For at the end of the day, as an island, we are particularly and peculiarly vulnerable. And in those circumstances, it is absolutely essential that that collaboration and cooperation take place, especially when we consider the risk that one of us may have our environment as well as our food production decimated during the course of a hurricane season every year. At the same time, we need to be able to tackle frontally, as my country is now being forced to do, the issue of access to water in order to be able to ensure that our farming practices cannot and will not be hindered negatively. My friends, access to capital, whether at the macro level or the micro level, is absolutely critical. At the macro level, my own government has had to spend millions of dollars for the first time in years on the whole issue of water harvesting to ensure that our farmers have access to water rather than being literally decimated and deprived of a crop because of lack of access to water. Equally, Our soils have to be the subject of greater care and attention, and that requires serious investment as well for many of us at a time when there is little fiscal space and little access to concessional resources, regrettably. I hope that we can buttress that access at the macro level with ensuring that there is also availability to affordable capital to our farmers, who very often are at the edge and in many instances undercapitalized and need the assistance wherever possible of cheaper sources of capital, as well as pooling access for micro-leasing, particularly as it relates to equipment and other aspects of technology. President Ali, you are speaking after me. I have every confidence that you are going to make a difference in being able to ensure that we can bring forward our targets from 2025 and ensure that we can reach at least 25% of regional food production being generated by ourselves by 2023. We can start with the 6-week crops and the 12-week crops. We can start with the livestock that is easy to rear. But we must also master the supply and logistics issue, with respect to transport. Unless we settle the transport issue, we are not going to be able to maximize the cooperation in this region. It is against this background, as the lead Prime Minister for the CARICOM Single Market and Single Economy, that I continue to work tirelessly with all parties who are interested in helping us to provide the maritime and the air transport necessary to ensure that our farmers can have access to the largest possible markets that they can, while at the same time ensuring that our people can have access to as much regionally produced food as possible. The last point that I want to make is that not all food is good food, and we need to come to grips with that. Our governments cannot continue to be spending hundreds of millions of dollars on chronic non-communicable diseases, or indeed, as I'm now working as co-chair of the One Health Global Initiative on Antimicrobial Resistance, on the reality that we have had an over-reliance on antibiotics, whether as human beings, in our livestock, much of which we import, particularly the poultry sector, and indeed on some of our crops. And ultimately, all of that feeds into our environment. We have to be conscious that just as all growth is not good growth, just as jobless growth is not good growth for our people, similarly, all food is not good food. We have a rich history of using ground provisions and eating a lot of fish and eating things that are generally healthy. But we became sucked in by the glamour and glitz of a world that wants us to eat processed foods and an oversupply of salt and an oversupply of a lot of things that, like fizzy beverages, that are simply not good for our people. And I ask us, as we seek to bring about food security for our people in this region, that we remember, let us do it the right way. In the same way that we understand that all buildings can't be good buildings now, and that we need to have green construction, and we need to have roofs that can withstand hurricanes, we need to have food that can nourish our bodies and reduce the level of expenditure that we are being forced to undertake personally and nationally to fight diabetes, to fight heart attacks, to fight all of the things that regrettably are killing too many of our citizens. My dear friends, if we can come together and settle on a framework to achieve greater levels of food security in this region, then we will have done well by our people. It is not going to happen by serendipity, but it can happen with careful planning and careful support. I end simply by asking IECA, FAO, World Food Programme, our international partners, that we work together, particularly in the provision of small videos that can advise and train and teach many of our small farmers across this region what and how they should proceed to deal with whatever it is they're planting. That level of technical assistance that they can access in a masterclass from you in 2 or 3 minutes will make all the difference as to whether they have a successful crop or whether they will cry and pray for the next crop. Let us work together to make sure that their successful crops will nourish our bodies, and that nourishment of our bodies will not lead to the negatives that we have been trying to fight off, but will give us the right sustenance to live long lives, healthy lives, and to be good with our people as we go forward, recognizing that at the end of the day, without food and water, we have no life. Thank you very much.